Ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Denise. So it's Friday, and usually that's our Friday News Roundup. And officially, we're doing the Friday News Roundup, except there wasn't much news to round up. It just felt like a real flat week. It felt like everybody was recycling the same boring stories that they'd recycled time and time again. How many times can we delve into the fact that Meghan Markle has a cooking show that everyone thinks is going to tank, because it probably will? And this week, the hot gossip was the fact that she had stolen all of Pamela Anderson's ideas. Now, as I said earlier this week when I made a video about it, Pamela Anderson had a show already, a cooking show, and it's in its second season. And she'd released the trailer in 2023, but nobody seemed to have made the connection or the parallel to the fact that Meghan's show looked exactly like it, till one person stepped out and said, that looks a lot like Pamela Anderson's show. And then everybody was like, oh my gosh, she copied it. And maybe she did. But see, this is the difference here. Of course, if Meghan did copy it, she did the clunky redo of what Pamela did. And Pamela Anderson is cooking in a farmhouse, but it has like modern farmhouse vibes, whereas Meghan's still plunking away at the 2014 version. And you know, everything that Meghan is doing right now just feels really haphazard, but it also feels really picked apart. So if you want to know what Meghan's doing, hop on X, because there's about 50 bajillion accounts that want to tell you every time she sneezed and made a funny face and, you know, look, she's getting older. Yeah, so are you. So, I mean, look, I'm not here to defend Meghan, but I'm also not here to just drag her for the sake of content. So I just felt like the news was just saturated with Meghan stuff that I just am like beyond. And then, you know, the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni thing continues to be a stranglehold on the nation, except some of us are like, I'm ready to come up for some air from this conversation. Because at this point, it's like, oh my gosh, I've been coming through the lawsuit, all 750,000 pages of it, and I found out that her attorneys switched a couple of words and a couple of commas. Now, obviously, there is more to it than that. But, you know, it's just kind of like at this point, I need the ball to start rolling on that situation. You know, y'all let me know when she comes out with another text about her dragons and I'll plug back in. But the story just feels like people are just squeezing the life out of it, you know, to retain those viewers, those likes, those clicks. And we've got bigger fish to fry here. But other than those two stories, not much was happening. Obviously, there was a shakeup in the prime time over there at MSNBC. This isn't a political channel, though, so I was like, can I really talk about the fact that Joy Reid is no longer going to be able to spew her racist diatribes at everybody?
I just want to give some free advice to the white progressives, particularly white progressive women who may be thinking about marching against the Trump victory, maybe putting back on the P-word hats and doing that thing. I would just say probably don't send any of those invites to any black women you know. I'm just going to tell you right now, they're not coming. I'm pretty sure black women have resigned from the Save America Coalition, Save Democracy Coalition, and definitely the Save the Democratic Party Coalition. I think that's probably not happening. I would just keep those invites maybe among your own friends because I don't think they're coming. But yeah, I think black women are now on the Save Black Women, prioritize black communities, black businesses.
In America, there's a thing about both white vigilantism and white tears, particularly male white tears. Really white tears in general, because that's what Karens are, right? They Karen out, and then as soon as they get caught, it's like, Green Waterworks. White men can get away with that too. And it has the same effect.
The conservatives are super stoked about it, but also sorry to lose such a gem for commenting. You know, she was really a person who made a lot of comments about things, and it was really easy to make fun of what she said because a lot of things that she said were just bonkers. And then you have the people on the opposite side who were just crying. I can't believe they would let Joy Reid go. What a voice of the nation. How could they let this strong black bald woman go? You know, she wore her wig so well. And I just think that, you know, it's not interesting. If there was anything to say about it, people have said it. I don't need to, you know, chime in on the convo. We had 2 celebrity deaths this week. Michelle Trachtenberg passed away shockingly. I don't think many of us knew that she wasn't well. She had posted some pictures on her Instagram and she was not looking very well. Quite peaked, really. And apparently she had had a liver transplant and it didn't take. And so her mother found her dead at 8 o'clock in the morning yesterday. Well, let's see, I'm filming this on Thursday, so Wednesday morning. It doesn't look like there was foul play or that she took her life or anything like that. Just she was very unwell. Then this morning, the morning of Thursday, February 27th, we had another death. Gene Hackman and his wife and their dog were found dead in their house in Mexico. What's that about? Nobody seems to know. So there's that news, but like both stories kind of die as soon as I've told you the headline. There's just nothing to discuss there. Usually I have a whole basket full of juicy tidbits. Ain't got nothing for you today. So I wanted to talk actually about two stories, though, that did come across my path that aren't necessarily specific to today and to this week and to things that have happened this week, because nothing's happened this week. But it was still things I wanted to talk to you guys about and see what your thoughts are. The first one was the fact that Monica Lewinsky this week was on the Call Her Daddy podcast. A worse name for a podcast I have yet to discover. But anyway, she was on there, and it's basically just her giving her story for all the people who weren't alive, when it happened. So I want to talk, I just kind of want to talk about that real quick. And then I also want to talk about dear Callahan over there at the Daily Mail. She's always, good for a Kennedy story. And now she's come out with a story that I've actually really wanted to hear for a while, and something that I've suspected. I mean, I'm not like some investigative journalist. I think all of us suspected this, but she goes into some detail this week in an exclusive that you had to have. I literally got a subscription to the Daily Mail just to read this story about how JFK and Lem Billings were in a gay affair together, and she brings quite some color to that story. So I wanted to read that with you and see what you think. So really, we're talking about old news, but I want to talk about it with you, and I had time to talk about it today. So this week, Monica Lewinsky was on the Call Her Daddy podcast. And if you've seen that podcast, you know that it's just a sex podcast. It's not something that I ever watch, but I did listen to this particular episode because I was interested to see how Monica Lewinsky would tell her story now to a newer audience. It's hard for me to believe that there's people who are like 25 years old who weren't alive when Monica Lewinsky was going through her whole situation. In my mind, it's still 2000. So I am shocked and amazed to find like 30 years have passed. But she gets on the podcast and she's going to tell her story. And Alex Cooper, the host of it, sits down, and before we ever even meet Monica Lewinsky, she sets out for us this, hypothetical. What if I told you that you were a young intern and you had gotten your dream job, and that you then embarked on a 2-year affair with your boss, and then unbelievably, you're at the mall, and then there's a sting operation, and you're surrounded by FBI, dragged into a hotel room, and, told you're going to be jailed if you don't cooperate. What if I told you that's a true story? It's like, I think we all know it's a true story. So it's just sort of surprising that there's still anybody who needs an introduction like that. But Monica Lewinsky gets on, and she's obviously visibly nervous. Regardless of the fact that she talked about this story many, many times, it's still sort of obviously a point of pain for her.
I was very quickly painted as a stalker, mentally unstable, not attractive enough.
You were 22 years old. He was 49. You were an intern. He was the president of the United States.
Because of the power dynamics and the power differential, I never should have fucking been in that position. There was so much collateral damage for women of my generation to watch a young woman to be pilloried on the world stage, to be torn apart for my sexuality, for my mistakes, for my everything. And I realized how much had been taken from me.
The whole conversation is sort of skewed by this understanding that Monica Lewinsky was a complete victim. And that in order for us to swing the pendulum back into some sort of median place, we need to go from her having been the pursuer and her having been the cause of all this destruction to, no, she was a complete and total victim. And I feel like, if I can just be frank with you, Monica Lewinsky was victimized, I think, by the media, by a media cycle that just chewed her up and spit her out and stomped on her face for decades. At the same time, while the actions, I think, of the media and of the White House post the affair being known, I think that it was like completely over the top and completely unfair, because they didn't castigate and treat Clinton in the same way they treated Monica Lewinsky. For them to act like it's shocking that there were any consequences to the fact that she had an affair with a married man is annoying to me, because I think it takes away the accountability that we as women get to have. Like, don't take my right away from me to make clear-headed decisions by acting like well, oopsie, it was, all you did was fall under that desk and, service him. All you were doing was having an affair with a married man, and then the FBI had to get in on it thanks to Linda Tripp. All you were doing was sneaking around the White House and seeing him when you could and, trying not to run into Hillary. That's all you were doing. Okay, younger me, when the Monica Lewinsky story came out, I was like 9 years old. But as I got older and I knew more about the story, my first initial reaction, younger, more judgmental me, if that's even possible, was like, what the heck? Somebody tries to corner you, you just, blow them off and get on your way, power struggle, nothing, doesn't matter if the most powerful man in the world comes into your face and, tries to give you all these flattering words, just like, power on, move him aside, keep going. Would that we could all just ignore power. But the older I get, the more I realize that no, power does have quite a loud voice in a conversation. If young Bob the intern had come on to Monica Lewinsky the way that Bill Clinton had, it would have been like, Bob, go get lunch. Leave me alone. But if Bill Clinton said the same exact thing to her that young intern could have said to her, it would have hit completely differently. He was 27 years older than her, I think. I think that it's like 27 to 29 years older, like some kind of crazy age difference. And so, of course, here she is, doe-eyed, all excited to be an intern, but not a serious person to me, because I think that if you get this job, you want to be taken seriously, and you get this job at the White House, and then the president wants to fool around with you, I can understand why that would be flattering. I get it. I'm not an idiot. But at the same time, I think, and again, she was so young that for me, sitting at this vantage point in my life, 37 today, I go, well, what the heck? Why would you do that? But I also know that young me in my early 20s wouldn't have been far-seeing enough to believe that this could ruin my life. I also would have believed that no one would ever find out. I mean, certainly he's not going to tell anybody. And I'm not going to tell anybody. So if we don't tell anybody, nobody has to know. But the thing is that Monica Lewinsky obviously couldn't keep it to herself. It was too exciting, too titillating, too thrilling to think that he wanted her. And so she ends up confiding in Linda Tripp. Linda Tripp, obviously, the utter betrayer, decides to record their conversations, and then she tips off the FBI, and then that's that. What a villain Linda Tripp was. Because even if Monica Lewinsky was doing the wrong thing, I mean, she should have told Monica, she should have counseled Monica, this is so foolish. I know you're young and it feels exciting. He is completely playing with fire, but you're going to get burned, not him. But Linda wanted her to talk. Linda, kept the conversation going so she could get better tapes for the FBI. I mean, a snake is what she was. She did not try to help Monica. So now from this vantage point, younger, more judgmental me was like, Monica should have just, run out of there and what is she doing? Flipping up the top of her jacket to show her thong. Like, they call her a hoe. Maybe she was one. I think that this narrative now that, the whole world was so unkind to Monica Lewinsky, I don't feel like we need to waste time shaming people for the poor decisions that they made, because they can't go back and change it. What good does it do for everyone to sit around? I also think that the fact that the media spent so much time castigating her for her appearance and being like, why in the world did she think she could go talk to the president? She ugly and fat. Why would you do that to someone? Why would you even comment on their appearance? Don't you think they feel lower than a snake's belly right now, as the whole world knows about the worst decision they've ever made? Why would calling her ugly and fat help your story? All of the outlets that wanted to make it about her appearance, or all of the outlets that wanted to make it seem like, she was this big slut. Hey, how about the old man in the White House that's, getting off on seeing her thong, or inviting her to come scuttle up under that White House desk? I mean, what about that guy? Nobody shames that guy. So I definitely believe the narrative was completely unfair and biased. And it's a shame that Clinton went off to, go live his life. And yeah, it was a bump in his career, but whatever, he managed to get past it and he went to live his life. Monica Lewinsky will always be branded with the Scarlet A. Her name will always be synonymous with scandal. Even when she does podcasts where she's, coming out and telling her story and, I'm going to reclaim the narrative. And now she's got her own podcast about reclaiming narratives. Monica Lewinsky can't go back and change all the things that were written about her. But I think that if she were to take a little bit more ownership for the part that she played, I think that that would be more cathartic than just needing to swing the narrative completely in the opposite direction. Now everybody wants to say, oh, she was completely victimized by a news cycle and by the White House. True statements. But she also did make the choice to enter into an affair with a married man who had a ton of power, and she would never have come out on top had anybody ever found out. And I know she was young and she couldn't have figured that out. But now that she's older, if she wanted to be a little bit more honest about the part that she played in her own demise, I think that would be a little bit more refreshing. So the Call Her Daddy podcast was not insightful. She didn't tell us anything that we didn't already know. It's a continual story of how victimized she was. And again, I don't think any of us would say that the media was fair to her. I don't think any of us would say that the way that they handled her appearance and the way they just went after her and never thought about the way all of their coverage was affecting another human being. I think all of that was wrong. But I think that the desire to now swing the story into the realms of, there I was, just poor little me, fell into that desk and unzipped his pants. I mean, I was just having an affair with a married man. Did I deserve all this? Well, I don't know if you deserved all of it. But if you want to get involved, you want to play with fire, there are consequences. And it just doesn't ever feel like this modern narrative of Monica Lewinsky includes a conversation about the consequences of having a relationship with somebody who's married. I think if she'd had an affair with him and he was his bachelor president, it would still have been scandalous. But it's the married part that really upset the conscience of America. And I think to want to retell the story, but brush over the fact that you made the conscious effort, the conscious decision to engage with him on this level and to take it to places. This is not the same thing as JFK throwing the intern down on, Jackie's bed upstairs. It's just not. And as much as it's wrong that Clinton did this, and I think he has never paid publicly for what he did with Monica Lewinsky to the extent that she did. He did not take advantage of her. Again, you can make the whole argument, well, what about power plays? Okay, well, what about power plays? Yeah, they're present, but everybody in the scenario did have a say in what happened. Nobody threw her down on a bed upstairs. So to now want to reap the same compassion from the nation as a victim of, say, outright assault, I don't think that's fair either. So there weren't any fresh takes. There was no juicy details. There was no oh my goodness, I didn't know about that part of the story. She really told us something we didn't know. Whoa, I can't believe she revealed that. Wow, he was way worse than we ever knew. You truly are the victim. None of that was revealed. It's just basically her giving her story for a new generation. The other story that I saw this week that truly piqued my interest was an article that Maureen Callahan wrote for the Daily Mail. And I literally got a subscription to the Daily Mail just so I could read this exclusive. I love it because this article addresses something I've wondered about for a long time. Now, obviously, I'm no investigative journalist, so I'm sure that many people have seen this and wondered too. So it's not like I found a little nugget. But Callahan wrote an article this week about the relationship between Lem Billings and JFK and that they were having a gay affair. I've wondered ever since I heard about Lem Billings and ever since I heard about his involvement with JFK, what the extent of that relationship was. Well, Callahan decided to write about it. Now, her bread and butter of late is Kennedy scandal, and she can't get enough of it. But you know what? I'm here for it. Now, we do have to take Callahan a little bit at arm's length because she can be quite catty. And so sometimes I think that her information is interesting, though the dose of cynicism and vindictiveness is sometimes a lot to handle. I still want to read the article with you. I actually haven't read it yet. I'm going to read it together with you first time because we've talked about the Kennedys so many times on this channel, and particularly Lem Billings came up in the last book we read about Ethel Kennedy, but we didn't get very much about him, that he's such a question mark to me that I couldn't jump on the story fast enough. So if you would like to join me, let's read about how JFK and Lem Billings possibly had this affair, and I think it's going to be good. She begins the story by saying that of all the secrets nurtured by JFK, his longtime love affair with another man was arguably the most risky. Kirk Lemoyne Billings, who went by Lem, was 16 years old when he first met Jack Kennedy, then 15. Both boys were enrolled at an elite all-boys boarding school in Connecticut. For Lem, it was practically love at first sight. Jack Kennedy was everything he was not. Roguish, charismatic, confident, effortlessly popular. Not just with the other students, but with girls and women. In the beginning, at least, Jack didn't realize that Lem harbored romantic feelings for him. But at some point in their friendship, Lem confessed his desires to Jack in a message scrawled on toilet paper, a common trick at the school, so that boys could easily swallow or destroy love notes to each other. That note was lost to history, but Jack's written response was not. He said, "Please don't write to me on toilet paper anymore." Kennedy replied, "I'm not that kind of boy." The realization that his new best friend was gay, however, did not deter Kennedy from maintaining a deep friendship with Lem, quite remarkable for the mores of pre-World War II America, and indicative of Kennedy's sophistication and maturity at a young age. Jack did not worry that his peers or parents might think he, too, was gay. Perhaps the sexual perversion that infested the Kennedy family blunted that concern. Father, sons, and brothers often shared the same women, yet there was never any acknowledgement of the homoeroticism involved. So Lem became a constant presence at Kennedy's famed compound on Cape Cod and Jack's forever shadow. The narcissist in Jack loved the attention, the adoration, the hero worship that Lem showered upon him. Their classmate, Rip Horton, witnessed Lem's complete servitude. As Horton told Kennedy chronicler Nigel Hamilton for his 1992 biography of JFK, in Lem, Jack found a slave for life. It was amazing how Lem was abused. He did Jack's laundry. Late at night, he'd run out in the cold weather to buy a pizza. Jack's back was always hurting. He'd go on to have multiple spinal surgeries, and Lem became his unpaid masseur, a hand he relished. And as Lem claimed later in life, after JFK was assassinated, he often gave Jack oral sex. They even had a shared nickname for Jack's, nether regions. J.J. Maher, apparently named after their strictest teacher back at school. Jack, an always sickly boy whose parents rarely hugged or kissed him, who was expected to excel at everything, found in Lem unconditional love and affection. Yet a part of Kennedy seemed to remain in denial after Lem's sexual orientation. Among the voluminous correspondence between them, which Billings saved despite Jack's admonition at the end of most missives to burn this letter, were graphic tales of sexual conquests and onanism. This is like, I'm starting to think I should have read this before I read it to you. But apparently, Jack's in the hospital, and he's writing to Billings, and he's like, I haven't serviced myself in some time, and I'm just sort of wasting away. And another Jack joke, the nurses are very tantalizing, and I'm really the pet of the hospital. The nurses are almost as dirty as you filthy-minded shit. I can't even read some of these notes. Like, they're, like, filthy. They're just, like, laced with profanity and, like, nasty talk. He wrote to Lem Billings when he got back and said, I still have your shaving brush. I'm going to return it. And then he calls him a series of disgusting names and then asks if he's ever been with a woman yet and ends it with calling him a bitch. It's like, man, you guys, what? She goes on to say that such insults were part of Jack's love language, and Billings took them as such. When Jack came up with the idea that they should lose their virginity together, Jack again, perhaps willfully oblivious to the intrinsic homoeroticism, Billings went along. Off they traveled to a brothel in New York City, and Jack insisted that they share the same prostitute. Whether they shared the sexual encounter as a threesome remains unclear. But their friend Rip Horton later said that Billings and Jack came back in a terrible panic because of venereal disease. They went to a hospital and got all these medicines and creams. As a taunt or a tease, and even while flirting heavily with Lem, Jack often wondered aloud why Billings couldn't find a suitable girlfriend. In a letter sent during his brief stint at Princeton University, Jack wrote to Lem, I don't know why you're so unpopular with girls. You're certainly not ugly looking exactly. I guess you're just not cut out to be a ladies' man. Jack's scrapbook from boarding school, housed at his presidential library in Boston, is full of photos of Lem or the two of them together. One with Lem posing upside down, his backside facing the camera between Jack's legs. Another has Lem hoisting young Jack up on his backside with loving messages scrawled alongside. Next to one of them, a pretty sight, woof woof. Another also of Lem, what a kisser. In the summer of 1936, 1 year after graduating, Jack wrote to Lem from Los Angeles of a groin injury that would hinder intimacy between them. If you could see what a thing of beauty my body has become with open air, it looks as though there will be no little rascals bearing the name Lemoyne Kennedy, as yesterday I got kicked where I love, which stretched me out for a few blissful minutes. I haven't heard from you in 3 weeks, except a couple of smutty postcards. Please communicate. Lem, of course, would never leave Jack, not even when a beautiful young debutante named Jacqueline Bouvier entered the picture. Early in their courtship, which began in 1952, Jackie knew 2 things. She wanted to marry Jack Kennedy, and that meant accepting Lem Billings and entering a love triangle. Lem was, for Jack, non-negotiable. Did Jackie know that her future husband had been intimate with Lem? That Jack and Lem joked about having a child together? That on a 2.5-month European trip they took together in 1937, they had jointly purchased a dog that they named Dunker, a dog they quickly had to rehome due to Jack's allergies? Nor did she blanch when Jack's friend Langdon Marvin, the godson of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, told her one night that if Jack were to marry her, it was only because people are starting to call him a fairy. In this country, if you're not married by 40, you're suspect. Jackie, however, had a gift for reading people. She quickly realized that Lem and Marvin were both in love with Jack and trying to scare her off. In September 1953, she and Jack wed in a lavish ceremony in Rhode Island. By 1960, they were in the White House, and so was Lem, with his own bedroom in the private residence. Jackie confessed to Senator George Smathers, one of Jack's closest allies, that she could barely stand it. "Just one weekend in my life," she said, "I'd like to have my husband to myself, but Lem is always there, bathing and massaging him, even putting on his shoes and socks." Whispers about JFK and Lem's special relationship flew through D.C., the press corps, the FBI and CIA, the latter agency worrying that Russia and other enemy states would blackmail the president with such information. Jackie understood. Her own father, Black Jack Bouvier, was a womanizing bisexual. Very little shocked her, and she came to appreciate Lem's loyalty and discretion, the stress relief, as Lem often put it, that he provided for Jack. But he wasn't always so quiet about it. Billings later told close friend Hollywood journalist Lawrence J. Quirk that he and Jack had been intimate, and that it was ongoing, with Lem providing oral gratification to Jack, never the other way around. Billings, Quirk said, believed that this arrangement enabled Jack to sustain his self-delusion that straight men who received oral sex from other males were really only straights looking for sexual release. That never bothered Billings. "People think I'm a joke," he once said, "but I'm stuck with the Kennedys emotionally, and I will be to the end of my life." The mutual devotion that Jackie and Lem had for JFK did little to soften their relationship. "There was no great love between them," Washington correspondent Charlie Bartlett said. They were rivals for Jack's love. Poor Lem was always the third person at what Jackie hoped would be an intimate dinner with her husband. Apparently, Lem just never heard the expression three's a crowd, but Jack insisted Lem be there. I don't think Lem ever really liked Jackie, but he did come to respect her. He felt she was more of a mother than a wonderful wife. Meddlesome Langdon Marvin was far easier to dispatch with. In fact, he did it himself. After running into famed author Gore Vidal, himself related to Jackie by marriage and openly gay, Marvin revealed what caused his expulsion from the Kennedy inner circle. "Year after year, I broke my balls for Jack, and this is how I'm treated. My crime? One night I lost control and I did what I've always wanted to do to him. I couldn't help myself. Apparently, he allows Lem to do the unspeakable, but he treats me like garbage." Didn't exactly say garbage. Marvin had been done a favor, for when JFK's assassination in 1963, it was Lem who would never recover, never move past it, never build a life for himself outside of Jack and the Kennedys. "Jack made a big difference in my life," Billings later said. "Because of him, I was never lonely. He may have been the reason I never married." Okay. Years later, Billings would find himself a new Kennedy obsession. Robert F. K. Jr., troubled and adrift after his own father was assassinated in 1968 while running for president. Bobby Jr.'s mother, Ethel, who had been left to raise 11 children, sent her troublesome son to live with Billings. He was 14. Billings became the primary adult in Bobby Jr.'s life, overseeing his education at New York's Millbrook boarding school, taking him on vacation, and ultimately claiming to have shared drugs with him. Millbrook teacher James Hedgeduke told RFK Jr.'s biographer Jerry Oppenheimer that Lem was a constant presence and that the faculty had been told that he was Bobby's surrogate father. He was coming up and taking Bobby out to dinner and things like that. Of course, that gave most of us a thought. Does this guy have a job other than caring for Bobby? Mark Bontkow, part of one of the richest families in Millbrook, was more alarmed. "The one thing that struck me," he said, "even at that tender age, was that I felt Lem was just obsessed with Bobby, the way he watched over him, the way he was hugely protective of him." Jackie, who had relocated to New York after JFK's death, was sure to keep her children, John Jr. especially, away from Billings. But Ethel Kennedy, it seems, had all but abandoned her son to this most desperate Kennedy groupie, who would do anything to cleave to an alpha heir. When Bobby began doing heroin at age 15, Billings, rather than intervene, claimed to have joined him. As with JFK and when he and Bobby would visit Ethel at Hickory Hill, her Virginia home, they would sit in the dining room in matching bathrobes and drink alcohol, straight shots, at 8:30 a.m. As with JFK and Jackie, Billings attempted to insert himself into young Bobby's love life, telling Bobby that he needed to marry a woman like his Aunt Jackie, and using one of Bobby's girlfriends, a Staten Islander named Valerie Duff Pacifico, as a confidant. Billings, Pacifico said, would at times be close to tears during phone calls with her, asking if she thought Bobby loved him. This is so weird. Bobby, by this point, was in his early 20s, and Billings was trying to break him and Pacifico up, telling Bobby that she wasn't a suitable Kennedy wife. No woman would have been a suitable Kennedy wife to Billings. He was, as biographer Sally Bedell Smith so memorably put it, probably the saddest of the Kennedy widows. He was also the most consumed by rage. Billings had a real streak of cruelty and abuse in him, another Kennedy biographer, David Horowitz, said. Here's the guy who's supposed to be the father figure, and he's doing heroin with Bobby and shooting delusions up his ass that he would be president one day. As Bobby Jr. went away to Harvard and began forging his own life, Billings fell further into drug and alcohol abuse. On the day before he died, in May 1981, Billings was inconsolable after Bobby had canceled a trip the two had planned to Haiti. "You've got to take care of Bobby," Billings told Harvey Blake Fleetwood, another inner circle hanger-on. Fleetwood replied that he didn't need to because Billings would always be there. Billings began to cry. "No," he said, "I made a terrible mistake. I took drugs with him. I made a terrible mistake. I let him down." The next night, Billings died in his sleep at 65. The cause was a heart attack, but it may as well have been a broken heart. JFK's sister Eunice delivered Lem's eulogy. "I'm sure he's already organizing everything in heaven, so it'll be completely ready for us," she said, "with just the right early American furniture, the right curtains, the right rugs, the right paintings." That was Lem to the Kennedys, even in death, only and ever, their faithful servant. Okay. Well, that was rather tawdry, wasn't it? I perhaps won't do that again, reading you guys something I've never read before. Smacks of Callahan, but I'm not necessarily surprised by any of it. I think that JFK, coming from a family that was just very sexually promiscuous, even if they did hide it behind a Catholic veneer, I think that whatever he wanted to do to make sure that he got his, he would have done. It's not surprising to me that he made caveats in his mind of, well, as long as I'm not performing these certain deeds with this person and I'm not doing it to them, then that, that's my finagling out of the idea that I could possibly be, homosexual. Definitely weird to keep somebody around who is obsessed with you. I think it would take a certain kind of self-delusion and a self-centeredness to even want that. That sounds like a nightmare. Somebody constantly panting over you and needing your approval and constantly needing you to make their life worthwhile. Just the pressure of that would just be disgusting and sickening. And I'm shocked that he would even want it. But what I'm more surprised by, even after that entire Kennedy book, that Ethel would put her children in the care of this guy. Surely she knew what was going on. Although, of course, Ethel did live a fiddly-dee, I'll think about that tomorrow, existence, where if it was an uncomfortable thought, she just didn't think about it or acknowledged its presence in her mind or the reality of it. This is a person who, well into college, could not conceive of the fact that adultery was something that people actually committed, not something that was just talked about in the Ten Commandments. She thought that was strictly a biblical thing. That God said, you shouldn't do that, but, nobody actually did. So this is a person whose naivete knew no bounds. But the fact that she would put her son in charge of this person, she doesn't seem like she had the insight that Jackie did. Jackie's like, that guy's not coming near my kids. And, of course, her kids, I'm sure, would have been the very children he would have wanted to come around. Particularly John Jr. His father's dead, but look, another mini-me. So she did right, but I don't know why Ethel didn't listen to some counsel or just open her freaking eyes. This weirdo sitting in your kitchen at 8:30 in the morning, downing shots with your adolescent son, and you keep wanting to say that your son is troubled. Why are you throwing him into the arms of the most troubled person in the room? Anyway, it makes me sad that Lem Billings' life was all about servitude to these people who were just using him. Makes me sad that he thought so little of himself, or he was just so confused and just so desperately wanting a place in this world that he would have given away his identity to be used and abused like that. Of course, I think he ended up being a user too, but I mean, it usually starts with somebody hurting you first. I mean, and that's not insightful. That's just the truth. Anyway, all right. Well, this has been a very unusual Friday morning roundup. I hardly feel like I can call it that. But thank you guys so much for those of you who got to the end of it with me. I appreciate it. And I will see you guys later. And hopefully next Friday we'll have something more interesting to talk about. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.